In today's tutorial, we're going to tackle one of the new features of JavaScript that has to do with classes. ECMAScript 2022 has provided class field declarations and private methods and fields, which make creating private data much easier. Before we get started, make sure to click that bell button and subscribe, and remember the discount links to all my courses in the description. Also, my website has a list of all the tutorials I've published. There are way over 200 now. These new ECMAScript 2022 features are now supported by all major browsers. So I wanted to cover how to use these to create class fields and private fields. I will also touch on how this can be very helpful. Let's start by looking at a basic class example and then take a look at how we can expand on this example with these new features. So right here I've created a class greeting. Basically it has a simple constructor. It adds a greet message to the underscore greeting field and it sets the underscore count to 0. We have some getter and setter methods here for getting the greeting and setting the greeting, both of those right there. And then we have one getter method for getting the count. And the only way we want the count increased is using this increase count method right here. That's the only way we want that to happen. Also, whenever we're setting and getting the greeting, we want to go through these getter and setter methods and not access the fields directly. So this kind of setup is where it's a nice feature with these private fields that we're talking about that we're able to now do. We finally, down here at the bottom, we have a show greeting method that basically just logs the console a greeting, and that's where the count is increased. That's where it calls that increase count method. So let's just jump to the console really quick. We'll take a look at how this currently works, and then we'll look at how we can enhance this with these new features. So if we just take a look at the greet one object, which I created at the bottom of the code. I don't know if I showed that, but down here is where I create it, right there. And I'm passing good morning as the greeting. So we can see that that object is set up. We have a greeting and we have a count. Now, if I do greet one dot underscore count, I can go ahead and retrieve that count. I can retrieve it outside of using the getter, which would be this. Okay. Now let's go ahead and call greet1.showGreeting. This is the, remember, this is the method that increases the count. It displays a message, welcome and good morning, and then it also increases the count. So if we do greet1.count using the getter, it's now set to 1. Okay. But notice what I can do here. I can do greet one dot underscore count, and I can set it to 3, for example. And now if I check it, it is set to 3. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to be able to be a possibility. The only way I want the count to be increased is when the show greeting is called, because that calls the increase greeting. Okay. Something else is I can also change the greeting message without using the setter. Without using that setter method, I could change it to good night like this. And sure enough, if we do the show greeting, that will say good night. And so it actually changed it. And so I put those getter and setters in place, but I'm able to do things outside of it. It doesn't restrict me at all. When my intention was to restrict so that those are what's used, and specifically with the count, it couldn't be changed in any other ways. So we need to make some changes to this class to make that function that way. So first thing I want to show is with ECMAScript 2020, we now are able to enter class fields. So technically, I could do this. I could do count equals 0. Outside of the constructor, I wouldn't have to establish this inside the constructor. I could establish it that way, and that would have the same result. Now, this is still a public field. I've not made it private. So we could still make the same changes to it like I showed a few minutes ago. We could still do the same thing with this field because it's still public. But the difference is we can declare it outside of the constructor if we choose to. We don't have to do everything in the constructor. But my intention is to make these private. So I'm going to turn this into a private field. And the way we do that is with the pound symbol or the hash. We're making that private now. That is now a private field. Now we need to then address that. Since I've changed the field itself, we need to come down here and change how that is addressed by putting that pound symbol, that hash in front of it. Okay, so there we've taken care of the count so that it will be updated and it will be displayed correctly. Now, let's go ahead and set up our greeting this way as well. I'm going to establish a private field there. I could establish it here or down here, either one, in the constructor or outside of it. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to establish it above the constructor, and then I'm going to set it in the constructor. And I change that there, putting the hash in front of it, and there. And I've got to do that to all of these to make sure they're all set up right. And then right here is the final one. Well, this one I can leave this way because this.greeting is actually calling the get method right here. And that's the one I want to call because I want that returned as uppercase when it's part of this show greeting. All right. So there we've made some changes. Let's go ahead and save that. And we'll refresh this here and we'll start all over with this. Let's see what we can do. So first, let's take a look at greet1.count. This is our getter. It shows 0. Now let's try to change that. Let's do greet1 and then we'll do the pound count and try to set that equal to 5. Notice what we get. We get a syntax error. It tells us that it's a private field. So we're not able to access that outside of the class. Now if we do greet1.showGreeting, I want to use our method here. And that says good morning in uppercase. Now let's take a look at our count. So we can jump back to our count here, and it is set to 1. So it updated it using the increase count method, the show greeting method did. And then also notice greet1 dot, we can't change the greeting either. If we try to set that to hello, something like that, we get the same syntax error, okay, that it's a private field. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. We've got those private, but notice one thing here. There is one way to change that count outside of the class. And let me show you what that is. I can simply call increase count. And then if I check greet1.count, it is set to 2. So it did increase it. So I'm still able to change that outside of the class, and I don't want that happening. So what we need to do here is we need to make this a private method. So let's go back and make that one last change. So if I put hash in front of it, now it's a private method. I need to change that down here, so I call it. So let's go ahead and save that and refresh one more time, and let's take a look at this. If I now try to do greet1.increase count, I get a syntax error. Private doesn't allow me to do it, but if I do, well, let me show greet1.count first so we can see what it's set to. It's 0. But if I do greet1.showGreeting, it says good morning now. If I check greet1.count, it's set to 1. So now the only way that is being changed is inside the class, which is what I wanted to achieve there. So this is a very nice feature available with ECMAScript 2022, and it makes us able to make these private fields without closure and also be able to have private methods. All right, please hit that like button and subscribe, and remember the discount links to all my courses in the description section. Click the bell button to be notified about new releases. I release new tutorials as soon as I am able to. And once again, thanks for watching.